All right, everybody. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Tech Service Today's webinar on rollouts in the QSR industry. My name is William Hull. I'm the VP of Business Development here at Tech Service Today, and I'm joined with Paul Zogby, who is our account representative that specializes in quick service restaurants and the restaurant industry. Paul, you want to say hi?
Hello, folks. Appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll be able to help you out with some things here.
Yeah, very good. So we're going to take about 20 minutes or so to give you a rundown, and then we will definitely leave time for questions at the end. So feel free to break in if you've got some questions while we're going, but we'll definitely make time for you to ask questions at the end of the event today. Okay. So the first element of any kind of large IT rollout, whether it's a point of sale system, wireless access point swap outs, or whatever it might be, is to make sure that you plan in advance. You don't want to wait until the last minute to begin planning. I know a lot of times you may have people from your business units coming down and they want things done very quickly. They might want a customer-facing Wi-Fi system installed. They might want a point of sale system swapped out. They want things done yesterday. But it's important to plan in advance, because planning in advance really sets the stage for everything that's going to happen with the entire project. And you really have to consider what can go wrong. As human beings, sometimes we have a tendency to look on the bright side. And when we're planning, we plan with the assumption that, everything is just going to go smoothly. We have a tendency to want to let people know that we can do it quickly, we can do it inexpensively, and we want to do it quickly and inexpensively, but in order to make that happen, we have to make sure we're looking for problems before they actually come up. And this, of course, gets us to the issue of project control. And we've got a slide here that if you've done project management before and you've taken a project management class, at least every project management class I've taken, this slide was shown in about the first 5 minutes of it. And so it's a simple concept here of cost and time and control. So on this graph, you have on the right to left axis, or excuse me, the left to right axis is time. So on the left, it's at the beginning of the project, and to the right is the end of the project. And the vertical axis is the amount of influence you have over how much control you have over the project and what's sunk into the project. So at the start of the project, if you look at the orange line, that's the amount of influence you have over cost and over time. And the green line is what you've got sunk into the project, the cost of it, the capital expenditure. At the very beginning of a project, you've got a lot of control over what's going to happen because nothing's happened yet. And so you have the ability to influence what's going on, and of course you haven't spent much money. But as the project moves along, you have less and less control over what's going to happen because of the decisions you've made in the past, and your sunk cost in the project that you can't recover keep going up. So it's important to keep this graph in mind, because the takeaway from this graph, this basic principle of project management, is that you need to put time upfront planning the project in order for it to be delivered on time, in budget, with the proper scope. And a lot of what this comes down to is risk analysis, looking for problems up front, anticipating problems so that you can roll things out smoothly. So now I'm going to turn it over to Paul to talk to us about another important piece of project planning for rollouts.
Thank you, Will. Hello, everyone, again. So yes, now that you've planned in advance exactly what you want to do for your project, now comes the time to develop detailed instructions and installation documents for your project managers that are going to be helping you facilitate this go smoothly. There's three pieces. Number one, you want to have a detailed instruction document with photos and diagrams. Once you've developed the scope, it always helps showing an example, a photo of the equipment that will be worked on, or certain cables that a tech should be looking for on site and where to plug them in to any piece of equipment. Those types of details always help. And then also diagrams, for example, a diagram of your network environment or just the general setup of where things are in a room. That will always help our the techs, facilitate what you want to accomplish. Number two, try to include a frequently asked question section in the scope document. That's important. If you've done these in the past, certain similar type of work, and technicians have asked you certain questions on where things are or have encountered some sort of issue in the environment, you want to bring that to their attention in the document so they can go through this section and see, how to troubleshoot something that might come up or might hamper the process quickly. And then number three, validate documents with field techs. What this means is once you have your scope document drafted, you want to get that over to the project managers that are helping. They'll review it, analyze any type of details, and ask questions. There might be a period of time where you and the project management team and the techs maybe are going back and forth with questions. And that way, once everything is validated, the project managers can get that out to the technicians who have been properly vetted to carry out your task, and that'll make this whole process that much more smoother right from the start with a detailed instructions and installation documents. Back over to you, Will.
Yeah, absolutely. The next piece that we need to consider here for rollouts is site preparedness. You really need to have buy-in from the people that are at your restaurant locations in order for this to go smoothly. The restaurant personnel, especially the management, they need to understand the importance of the project and how it's going to improve their lives. And that's important because you need to make sure that they're going to be at the right place at the right time with the right keys to provide the technicians access to the equipment and the areas where they need to work. And by getting their buy-in beforehand so that they understand what's happening with the project at a high level and how it impacts them and how it's going to help them do their jobs, make their lives easier, make things more efficient for them, they're more likely to be willing to be helpful participants in this process. It's important that you ensure that the necessary equipment is on site. You need to make sure that you're tracking the equipment or your equipment vendor is tracking it and that you verify that it is on site. And it's also important that you make clear when the technician is going to arrive and what exactly they need to get access to. One thing we've seen happen in some of these is that a manager may receive a package and they take it home for safekeeping because they don't have a place to lock it up in a small QSR. And then the technician arrives and there's a lack of communication and the technician can't find the equipment and the people that show up can't find the equipment because it's ended up being taken off site. There have also been some occasions, frankly, especially we've seen this a couple of times with wireless access points where store personnel have simply taken them. So it's important that you have a chain of custody and that the manager or whoever is going to show up on site to give the technician access knows where the equipment is exactly, which equipment it is, and has the necessary keys or codes to get access to that equipment, because otherwise you've got a technician standing around waiting, and that is a big problem. Another piece of this is making sure that you do reminder calls and emails Our recommendation for best practice is to have a conference call with a group of restaurants in a given week to let them know what the project is, again, to get their buy-in, and also letting them know the importance of being on time, that you follow up with them with calls and with emails, including the day before, to make sure that they're going to be there at the right place at the right time with the keys and codes to give the technician access so they can get to the site where they need to do the installations or swap outs and the equipment. And also to make sure that they arrive early, because again, what we're trying to do here is risk mitigation. You run into traffic, you run into weather delays, somebody may oversleep a little bit, especially if they're having to arrive earlier than they're used to arriving. A lot of times with these projects, people are not on their normal schedule, and whenever you do something that's out of somebody's routine, you increase the likelihood that they're going to forget about it. They're just going to go into their old routine. So it's critical that you're reminding people and you're getting them in on site early so that when the technician arrives, the tech can get the equipment, get things up, call into your help desk, get it installed, get it tested, and be released from the site quickly. Very critical. Another piece of what's critical to a successful rollout are pilot sites. Failure to pilot projects is the #1 cause of not meeting budget, schedule, and scope targets in our experience. If you just make a nice plan and then immediately roll out your full schedule, you will inevitably run into problems from things that you didn't foresee. No matter how good of a job you do of trying to think through things hypothetically, there's no substitute for putting boots on the ground in real restaurants with real equipment to see what happens. So doing pilots enables us to do several things. The first is to ensure that the instructions are effective, both with the technicians in the field and with the people on your help desk. Even if you know, we've reviewed them, you've reviewed them, it's good to see what actually happens with those documents when you get out in the field. Sometimes what makes sense to us, what makes sense to you, what makes sense to whatever provider you use to put these resources out in the field may not seem obvious to your people internally on your help desk or the people that are out in the field. It also enables us to find unforeseen problems. So that's the thing about unforeseen problems, that you didn't see them. By getting there out in the field, you can run into the problems in a small batch rather than getting yourself jammed up with a large rollout. And so this gives us the opportunity to revise the instructions, revise the procedures, and also to estimate completion time. And this is really critical, because one of the most dangerous things that you can hear in the world of project rollouts is, well, it should take this long. And that word should, whenever you hear that word should, if it comes out of your mouth or somebody else's mouth, your antenna should go up. They need to go up, because that's a dangerous word when it comes to completion time. What you think about in the nice world, a world in which you're trying to keep costs low, may not match what the real world is like. And I will give you an example. We had a customer, a large QSR customer, that was doing a Wi-Fi swap out last year. This was for an internal system that they had. It was not customer facing. And they estimated that each site would take 15 minutes. The argument being, well, you show up, you go, you unscrew the old access point, you put the new access point in, you plug it in, quick call to the help desk to test it, they ping it, it works, boom, out the door. Here's what really happened when we got in the field and piloted it. They did not exactly know where these access points were, and they were covered by drop ceilings. They were installed above the drop ceilings. So there was no way with most of these sites to know exactly where they were located. So it would take anywhere from 15 minutes to, in a couple of cases, 45 minutes to go around popping tiles, trying to find it, trying to use their phone to wander around and find out where the access points were. Then when they found them, were able to swap them out. What they discovered was that some of the cables and jacks and connectors were bad and they couldn't ping the network. So both because of not knowing where these were located and not and having cabling problems, they didn't all take 15 minutes. And then on top of that, you've got the issue that there were people that weren't on site to allow the technicians in at the proper time. And there was also some issues where they didn't know where the access points were. So you add all that up and you see that it certainly took on average more than 15 minutes per site. By doing the pilot, we were able to catch that, and they were able to realize, oh yes, more realistically, it's going to take more like an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half per site to do this, and we need to do some homework to see if we've got any kind of diagrams that we can find out where these access points are, or we've got to send somebody up and pop the tiles to find out where they are before the technician arrives so we can keep costs down. So that's why these pilot sites are so critical to rolling out a project. It's very tempting to think we've got it all figured out. Let's just roll, let's go, let's do 50, let's do 60 sites. Let's get this banged out in, you know, a few weeks or whatever it is. We've got a tight deadline. By taking some time to pilot, what we recommend is between 3 to 20 sites, depending on the size of the project. It does take a little more time up front, but it saves you a lot of time and money at the end of the project. So when you schedule the full rollout, you want to make sure that you've got sufficient coverage at your central help desk to handle the call volume for check-ins, troubleshooting, testing, and checkouts. This is another reason why the pilot is important. It allows you to get a sense of how much time it's going to take your internal staff to make these rollouts work correctly. Make sure that you're mindful of time zones, because sometimes you might forget that 8 o'clock on the East Coast is 7 o'clock in Central and 6 o'clock in Mountain Time, and you can think that you've got things staggered, and you don't if you don't consider the time zone. And you can get a nasty surprise when you have 2 or 3 times as many technicians calling in at once as you were expecting. Again, you want to be realistic about completion times based on the pilot site results. Again, avoid the "it should take" trap. Of course, we always want things to go as quickly as possible, but in the real world, things do take time, and you want to allow for room for mistakes, unforeseen problems, even after the pilot. So we recommend that you plan for 10 to 20% extra time on average to deal with problems. Now, you'll just have to see what the pricing option is of the provider that you choose to do it. At TST, we charge for time on site. So if you can get it done more quickly, you don't end up getting charged for it because we base it on time on site. But that's a business decision you have to make in terms of the provider that you use. So again, make sure when you're scheduling that you're realistic in terms of your estimates and that you're realistic in terms of the coverage you need on your internal help desk, because the last thing you want are technicians sitting out in the field, charging up billable hours, waiting for your help desk to call them back and be able to test and get them checked out. All right, Zogby, back over to you, to everybody's favorite part of the project, the closeout.
Yes, thank you one more time. Yes, project closeout. This is very critical to execute at the end of your projects. This involves 3 steps. Number 1, you want to make sure that you have photos, documents, and diagrams, that those were delivered to you from either the project managers you're working with or the account rep. You want to make sure that everything that you wanted accomplished is, and any types of deliverables you requested, you get on each checkout from all your dispatches. And then at the end, you're going to want to review those, make sure everything was executed correctly. Number 2, going back to the first thing, photos, documents, and diagrams. that's going to allow you to accumulate a knowledge base for future work at sites. So not only did you complete your project at that site, now if any of those things are to break, hopefully they don't, but things do, now you have photos, documents, and diagrams of what was done during this project, so you can refer to that, to the project manager or the technician that's dispatched out for the next thing that comes up. Number three, you're going to want to review all the completed work. This is very important. You want to make sure that the company completed all the work to your expectations. Not only do you want the work to be complete, but hopefully they exceeded your expectations. You want to ask them how you feel about the level of communication you received with the project managers and the technicians. They should be making sure that you're happy with the communication from check-in, check-out, and ETAs. Also, your deadlines, which are very important, you want to make sure those were fulfilled. You want to make sure that the project time frame was completed. You also want to ask what aspects of the project went well. And on the other hand, what aspects didn't go well. And this leads into number 4. For the things that didn't go well, you want to make sure that any mistakes or exceptions are documented. If this is to be another type of rollout or any other project that's similar, you want to make sure that you avoid any mistakes or exceptions, and then write those down, and hopefully they won't happen again. And then lastly, lessons learned. After you review everything and you make your exceptions are documented, you just want to make sure and discuss with the team, lessons learned, any type of issues that came up or things that were done one way. You learn something from those and you don't repeat it the next time around, and then that way, everything should go smoothly from the very start, hopefully. Back to you, Will.
All right. Thanks a lot, Paul. All right, great. Well, we've wanted to keep this to about 20 minutes, and I think we've done a fairly good job of doing it. So I'm going to unmute everybody, and if there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer any questions. So any questions out there?
I guess I've got one.
Sure.
You guys deal with, I guess, techs in different areas. We've had challenges at times making sure that the end result in different cities is to the same standards. And have you guys put anything in place to keep that consistent?
Sure, that's a good question. We recommend that there's 2 pieces of that. One is to have a check sheet that gets signed by the on-site manager that you've got there. And the other piece of it is, well, you know what they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. We take pictures as standard operating procedure. We then load them up into a web portal where we also upload site diagrams as necessary, the completed signed off checklist, photos of everything that's happening. One of the things Paul mentioned on the last slide was developing a knowledge base. By having these photos, it enables you to have a knowledge base that you can have moving forward. And with our system, it enables you to, you can either leave them there or you can, and this is a best practice, is to download them into your own knowledge management system, whether it be SharePoint portal or whatever, so that you have a database for each of your locations and you have a visual inventory and documentation for that site. Remember what I referred to in that earlier story about the rollout we did last year for the Wi-Fi swap outs. Had they had pictures of where they had placed them before, they would have saved themselves literally hundreds of labor hours of internal labor that they spent popping tiles looking for them. Had they had those pictures, they would have been able to access those a lot more quickly. Now that we have that knowledge base and they've downloaded that into their SharePoint portal, they're able to know moving forward where these access points are, so that when they do the next swap out in a couple of years, it's going to go a lot faster than it would if they didn't have those. So we really recommend that, regardless of what provider you choose for your projects, that you ensure that they're taking photos, that they're having documents, and that they've got a way to transmit those to you easily. Good question. Any other questions?
Yes, I got a question.
Sure.
Yeah, I got a question. So, when you talk about pilot sites, how many pilot sites do you guys recommend usually, or is it just based on the size of the project?
Yeah, good question. We recommend a minimum of 3 at a rock bottom minimum, and that's for something where you would be rolling out something to around 20 to 30. North of that, we recommend up to 20 sites. Again, it just depends on the size of the project, and what we recommend with that is that you're doing it over diverse kinds of sites. It's ideal that you do it in different geographical areas and at different times of the day, because you want to make sure that you've got different scenarios to throw at yourself. Let's say you have some QSRs that have, let's say you have 3 basic configurations of how your store is laid out. You'd want to make sure that you're piloting, you're evenly distributing the pilot sites between those different layouts. And also, if it's a long, let's say, we've got projects where we're doing, 2,000 locations and we're doing 50 or 60 a day, and you're using multiple shifts of help desk personnel, you want to make sure that your different shifts of your help desk personnel get covered in the pilot. You don't want to just be doing a pilot with one of your shifts and figure out what's going on with them, and they get some experience and not others. So it's important to distribute them across that. Now, I know that was a good question. I know I've kind of gone way beyond what you asked, but I hope that was a helpful answer. Got me on a roll there, because I'm a big proponent of pilot sites. I know most people don't get really excited about them, but I do. What can I say?
Definitely answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I do actually have a follow-up question to the first one.
Sure.
Actually, the documentation, shared documentation through a web portal, that sounds absolutely incredible. We've had a lot of difficulties, especially with documents MIA for future jobs, which has caused a headache. For your company, do you charge for the web portal?
No, we don't. That is part of just the value add of what we do at TST. So we do not charge extra for it, no.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Anybody else? All right, I'm hearing crickets out there. So thank you very much for your attention, everybody. You can see on the final slide there, you've got the contact information for Paul Zogby. He handles our QSRs all across the U.S. and Canada. And then there's my contact information. Paul is definitely your best contact. He's the guy that's out there in the field every day. But if I can be of any assistance, answer any questions, please do not hesitate to call us. If you think we could be of help in some rollouts, we'd be happy to help you. But we're also happy just to answer your questions. So we appreciate your attention, and we will be posting a recording of this webinar to the website. You'll be getting a follow-up email, so you can see the link to that. Feel free to share it with other members of your team. And if you've got any questions, again, please don't hesitate to be in touch with us. All right, well, thank you very much. We really appreciate your time today, and we hope you all have a beautiful rest of your Tuesday afternoon.